All right, folks, we'll get started in another 20 seconds. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the City Council hearings night. This is a hearings meeting of the Springfield City Council. The date is December 13th, and the time now is 7:03. Madam Clerk, would you please be so kind to call the roll for us this evening?
I did. Counselor Williams, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Counselor Edwards,
Present.
present. Counselor Letterman,
Present.
present. Counselor Gomez,
Present.
present. Counselor Allen, Counselor Allen,
I don't believe he's with us, Madam Clerk.
Krista, I can't. I'm still having problems with my sound, Counselor. Can you hear my sound?
I can hear you okay, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Curran,
Present.
present. Counselor Whitfield,
Present.
present. Counselor Reynolds, Counselor Ramos,
I don't believe he's with us. Madam Clerk, you're muted.
Counselor Brown,
Present.
present. Counselor Walsh,
Present.
present. Counselor Davila,
Present.
present. Counselor Fenton,
You will not be joining us tonight, Madam Clerk.
absent. Counselor Hurst,
Present.
present. Counselor Williams,
Present. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will our guest and councilors please rise for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh, for accompanying me during that.
Was it just me?
It was more, it was more coordinated and actually.
Okay. Let me add Semper Fidelis.
Councilors, before we get started this evening, I just wanted to provide a brief update. So there's 8 items before us this evening, and 4 of them folks have expressed to me that they are going to be requesting a continuance for those items, and I will let the appropriate individual speak at that time. But because of that, those items, some of them might be continued to January if it's going to be the first hearing, and others I'm going to call a special meeting for the items we actually will hear tonight for next week. And the reason I'm not going to be adding them to Monday's agenda is because I want the agenda for Monday to reflect the caucus of the president and vice president for the 2022 legislative year, and therefore would prefer that meeting to be quicker. So what I will do is hold a subsequent special meeting next week to address the items we actually do have the opportunity to hear tonight for its first reading. Obviously, this is the first reading for all items, and those that we do here will be continued until next week. So with that being said, Madam Clerk, Councilor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to continue items 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and you said 4. And more importantly, I'd like.
I'm sorry, Councilor Hurst, it's actually item number 8. The last zone change.
Okay, is it? I'm sorry. Okay, got it. So I'd like to make a motion to continue items 1, 2, 3, and 8. They all pertain to marijuana. As many of you may know, we just received the audit from Auditor No, and I think it's important before we vote on anything for everybody to have an opportunity to digest that particular audit. In addition to the point that you raised earlier, Mr. President, it would seem to me that it would make sense for us to continue it to January, only because if it continues into the new year and we have a new members on the council, which we are going to have, then we would have to start the hearing from scratch, or they would not be able to participate in it. And seeing that I anticipate that there may be litigation during phase 2, it doesn't make any sense for us to contribute to that by doing something that we could have avoided to do in the first place. So my motion is to continue items 1, 2, 3, and 8 until our hearings meeting in January.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. There's a motion on the floor. Before we dispose of that motion, Madam Clerk, can you please recognize Councilors Allen and Councilor Ramos?
Counselor Allen? Counselor Ramos?
Present.
Present. Counselor Allen?
I know he's on the call. I'm not sure if he's having issues at this time. With that being said, we can continue with the motion that is on the floor proposed by Councilor Hurst and properly seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, can you, Councilor Ramos, did you have a comment on the motion?
I did, Mr. President. Just wondering, number 8 is unrelated to marijuana, so I'm wondering why the request to continue that one.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Ramos. It was indicated to us by Mr. Dromey and Phil. Feel free, I'll give you the floor to speak to it if necessary, that the petitioner is having some issues with his engineering team in terms of drawing out the plans, and would like the continuance to be for January.
Yes, Counselor, that's correct. I've been in contact with the petitioner. I guess a couple of weeks ago, his engineer actually had COVID, so he is still waiting for finalized plans that he's hoping to present. But at this point, I would recommend that this be tabled or continued until January, because the planning board is hopefully going to hear this at their first meeting in January, and then you guys can hear it at the end of the month. But he is planning to still move forward. I've indicated to him that this can't be on here forever, but he has assured me that he is moving forward with his plans to address some of the concerns raised by the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Madam Clerk, can you now please recognize Councilor Allen?
Counselor Allen?
I see him joining us by video. I know he's joining by way of iPhone, but we'll need a proper recognition, so I will circle back.
Present.
Oh,
You hear me? I said present a couple times, no?
thank you, Councilor
Now-
Allen. All right, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on Councilor Hurst's motion?
On the motion to continue items 1, 2, 3, and 8, Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Curran?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Counselor Brown? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Counselor Walsh?
yes,
Yes. Counselor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Fenton? Absent. Counselor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Williams?
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 4?
Item number 4 is for special permit for an accessory wall sign.
Madam Clerk, we're having some issues with your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that is actually much better.
So item number 4 is for an accessory wall for 1500 Main Street.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Phil, I'll give you the floor. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Phil Dromey, Deputy Director of Planning, 70 Tapley Street. I just want to remind the counselors that this is actually the second hearing for this one. I'm hoping the petitioner is here, but this was heard, I think, back in November, I believe, and it should have been on one of the subsequent meetings, but hadn't been. So I just wanted to remind everybody that this is actually the second hearing for this particular one. The rest are the first hearings, but this one's the second.
All right, Phil, I appreciate that clarification. With that being said, then I will ask the clerk, Councilor Letterman, did you have a comment before we proceed?
Oh, just that I'm excusing myself from this vote, Mr. Chairman.
Great, okay. Madam Clerk, can you please mark Councilor Letterman's recusal?
Yes.
At this time, I will ask, is there any remaining testimony on this particular item in favor of the special permit? Madam Clerk?
There is none.
All right. With that being said, is there any remaining testimony for those in opposition of this special permit?
No, there is not.
All right. With that being said, are there any questions for the petitioner from the council at this time?
Motion to approve, Mr. President.
All right. There's a motion on the floor by Councilor Hurst to approve the special permit.
Second.
There's a proper second, I believe, by Councilor Edwards on that motion. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to approve the special permit?
On approving the special permit, Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Letterman? Recuse, Counselor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Whitfield?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes. Counselor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Walsh?
yes,
Yes. Counselor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Fenton, absent. Counselor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Williams?
Yes, the special permit is, Madam Clerk, can you please give me the vote count on that?
11.
All right, thank you. The special permit is approved. Councilor Edwards on the reasons.
The specific site is an appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. The use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. To incorporate the staff analysis into the decision as the basis of finding.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the acceptance of the reasons?
On accepting the reasons, Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Letterman? Recused, Counselor Gomez?
Madam Clerk.
Counselor Gomez,
Counselor Gomez.
I'm sorry? I don't know. I don't work here.
Excuse me, Counselor Gomez on the vote. That is a yes, Madam Clerk.
thank you. Counselor Allen,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Curran,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Whitfield,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Ramos,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Brown,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Walsh,
yes,
yes. Counselor Davila,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Fenton, absent. Counselor Hurst,
Yes.
yes. Counselor Williams.
Yes, thank you, counselors. Madam Clerk, the next item, please.
The next item is for a special permit for the reuse of an existing structure at the property known as 195 State Street.
Counselors, this is on for its first reading. Is there anyone present to speak to this special permit? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Councilor Marcus Williams, President. I am Gordon Pulsifer, President of First Resource Companies. I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of this special permit.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. City Councilors, it gives me great pleasure to come before you again to request a special permit for housing in the city of Springfield. This building is located at 195 State Street. In the way of a little background, the building was the original home for the fire insurance company in the city of Springfield, and was built almost 100 years ago. Most recently, it was the home for the superintendent of schools, as many of you may recall. It's located on State Street at the corner of Maple and State. And we are requesting a special permit to build 41 apartments inside the building. The unit makeup will be 6 studios, 32 one-bedrooms, and 3 two-bedrooms. Our challenge with this property is it has very little land. So our major challenge is the parking. Currently, there will be 2 parking spaces when completed, which leaves a shortfall for the parking. We've taken a close look at the parking, and we feel that we're probably the best to solve the problem. We have several parking lots on High Street, which is 1 street behind the building, our property, Maple Commons. Later this evening, we're going to be talking about 310 State Street, where we're going to have parking on State Street in addition to this. Our company is well vested in this neighborhood, and we feel we have ample parking. The parking requirement for the 41 units is a total of 46 spaces. Our experience in previous special permits is that our need for parking is significantly less. For an example, we came before you not too long ago on Indian Motorcycle. A special permit was issued for 60 apartments. We have 70 parking spaces for those apartments, and we've only used 22 of them. So the need for parking isn't as great as the requirement in many cases. And this building being downtown with public transportation all around it will facilitate the need for transportation with people living in the building. So we feel very comfortable with the fact that we've solved the parking requirement and the parking need, having so many buildings in this neighborhood. And in addition to that, there's a parking garage to the right of the building at 181 State Street. In your packets, you'll see a letter from the owner of that building making spaces available for monthly parking. In addition, we've met with the museum and library board, and they will also have parking on a monthly basis to the left of the building. So the building is surrounded by parking opportunities and availability. So we see the best use for the property is residential housing. We will obtain the resources from the state. The building is located in the Lower Maple Historic District, is currently listed on the National Register, which makes available resources to the building for federal historic credits, state historic credits. And these are some of the resources that we will utilize to redevelop the building. That pretty much completes my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Proposer. For Councilor Curran, I see your hand in the queue. I'll get to you right after the testimony.
Thank you, Councilor Williams. Yeah, I did have a question. Mr. Pulsifer, welcome here to the City Council tonight. Glad to see you here.
Curran, I'm sorry. If I can just get to the testimony first, I will certainly circle back with you when we open it up to the full council.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I will ask then, have we received any testimony for those in favor of the special permit?
Not that I have, no.
All right. Seeing none, have we received any testimony for those in opposition of the special permit?
I have one piece of testimony here before me, and I know that the council was emailed a couple other items, which I don't have before me right now, but I can read this one into the record.
All right, feel free. Thank you.
So we received an email dated Friday, December 10th, from Kelly Watkins, who is a resident at the Classical Condos. And in this email, she writes, "Evening City Council, I'm a resident of Classical High Condominiums. I'm against any more affordable housing apartment units in this area. There are many affordable housing apartment units in this immediate area already. If you would like to have affordable housing for families, have homes rehabbed in order for families to live, play, and thrive in a safe environment. It's important for affordable housing to be in an area for children to play away from downtown traffic. I plan to be tuned into the virtual public hearing Monday. Sincerely, Classical Condominiums resident of over 25 years.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. And I know you alluded to the fact that there was others sent to the distribution of the entire City Council, so I'll trust to solve that information. Do we have anyone on the call willing or wishing to be in opposition to the special permit? All right, seeing none at this time, I will turn it over to the council for any questions for the petitioner. Councilor Curran.
Thank you, President Williams. I just had a question for Mr. Pulsifer. Was there a parking study done recently? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we have had a rash of unfortunate incidents. We just recently, 2 weeks ago, a young woman, 16 years old, died at the State Street crosswalk with White. And about a month ago, or less than a month ago, a city librarian died crossing the street on State Street. So if you do add 32 one-bedroom apartments to the mix, and if those individuals are going to be not using a car and walking along State Street, was there a traffic study done as to how this will add to the current situation that we are trying to address?
No, I have not prepared one. As many of you know, I installed a crosswalk up on State Street because the exact same thing happened across from Indian Motorcycle. And one of the things we did in our construction is build a traffic light and a crosswalk. I have been in conversations not only with the city, but neighborhood associations, how important it is to have the same type of crosswalk directly across from the library. I totally recognize the fact that it slows traffic down, but this is a very busy area and traffic needs to be slowed down. And I don't think the use of buildings such as this should be stopped because of lack of access across of State Street. I think that should be done. And I just wanted to say one more thing. There's a lot of testimony here that's in favor of this project, and it hasn't been read here at this hearing, and I question why. We all have it.
Mr. Pulsifer, the clerk, what she had in her possession was read into the record. For things that were distributed to the city council and not to the clerk, I've trusted the council to have read that information for their purposes. So that is probably why they're perhaps the answer to your question.
Well, I'm not sure why I would have.
And Mr. Pulsifer, you also have another opportunity next week to be heard and for testimony to be read into the record, at which time any information that was not presented today can be presented then. Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any more? I'm sorry. Just want to get back to where we were in the queue here. Are there any other questions for the petitioner at this time? Councilor Woodfield.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President. So we did get testimony that was read. I didn't see a lot in favor. I did see a couple, but we did get some opposition that wasn't read as well. And one of the oppositions that we did read that I thought was important, because it is a low income housing facility, is where would the kids play? Like, is there a playground? Is there a community room? It doesn't have a lot of land, like you said. So is any of that in consideration?
First of all, we only have 3 2-bedroom apartments. The majority of these are studios and 1-bedrooms. So there will be very few children in this property.
Okay. Is that for certain? Because sometimes kids stay in a 1-bedroom with their parents. I mean,
generally, we find that when there's children, there is a need for 2 bedrooms.
So for the 3 or 4 children that may live there, there wouldn't be anywhere for them to go to play or anything like that.
There's a park across the street. Correct.
Because parks aren't just for children. You know, leisure areas are for adults as well. So
right.
I feel like you're being a little bit condescending in your tone. So open space is good for all families, whether you're a single individual or someone with children. So I'm just asking about the recreational open space area.
There is no land with this building.
Thank you. I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Davila, followed by Councilor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pulsifer, thank you for being here today. I'm just wondering, this is going to be a 41 unit, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we roughly going to have anywhere between 130 to 140 people living in that building, roughly?
That could be.
Okay. And now you did say, oh, by the way, Mr. Pulsifer, I did read the what was submitted to us by the clerk, the documents in support of the project from the Aqua Civic Association, and also some of the other surrounding businesses. So I have reviewed them myself. Now, Mr. Pulsifer, one of my biggest concerns is what Councilor Curran had just spoke of, and that is traffic. We just had a meeting today. The city is going to be doing some work there in early spring. Now, did you contact the DPW regarding how this fits with that project of the new crosswalk / hawk system is going to be developed?
I have not.
Okay. And Mr. Pulsifer, how, if I'm trying to also think, because not only we have the issue of the walkability and the safety, but how this fits with the overlay district is something that I'm trying to wrap myself around. Can you give me a 30-second view of your vision?
I'm sorry, I'm unclear on your question.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how this fits with the overall area, in particularly that is so close to the upcoming overlay district that we approved a few months back in downtown.
Well,
Go ahead.
housing's a part of that overlay district, and this fits in with that need. This building has always been slated for apartments for many years. And when MGM decided not to pursue apartments here, that's when I became very concerned, having a huge vested interest in this neighborhood. We 2 years ago, we spent over $40 million on one street behind us. And we have just under 300 apartments in this neighborhood. And we're very concerned about what happens here. And I think our proposal is the best for what the need is. This building overlooks a very historic park, Merrick Park. One of our plans is to adopt this park. We've been in discussions with the city, the museum, and part of our renovation plan was to renovate this park. It's been included in our construction numbers. And we're very excited about this corner, and we feel it's a great place to live. It provides housing, walking distance to downtown Springfield. And with the limited parking challenge, we feel that our company is best suited to solve that problem. And there's no question there's a problem crossing State Street. I'm one of the few people that have stepped up and solved this problem at the other end of State Street. I fought for years for that crosswalk, and it was this council that gave approval and the nod that pushed me forward so I could get the final approvals and engineering. We paid for that crosswalk. The city of Springfield didn't pay for that crosswalk. Gordon Pulsifer did.
Actually, and we thank you for that. But just to start wrapping up, I want to consume my time. That was my next question, Mr. Pulsifer. You didn't pique my curiosity when you talked about the crosswalk. Is that something that you perhaps will be willing to do with this project? And if so, can you render us a drawing, potential drawing, what that might look like? If it's with the DPW.
Well, I certainly could. Be more than happy to do so. I think we did a good job designing the previous crosswalk. Although the city has indicated to me that they're going to move ahead on this or are looking into this themselves. But I'm more than happy to participate in its location, design. We've already paid the design costs and the engineering costs for the previous lighted crosswalk. And So a lot of that can probably be reused.
Right. Thank you. Mr. President, just to wrap up, thank you. I will encourage you to reach out to the DPW. Mr. President, if I may, sir, if appropriate, I would like to request that Director Signoli be here at the next hearing to talk about how this fit with the overall project that we were informed today for that area on State Street. Sir.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. We can certainly try to confirm that for the next hearing.
Councilor
Mr. President, thank you. I see that Tim Sheehan is on the call, and Mr. President, I'd like to ask if although Mr. Pulsifer kind of alluded to it, Tim, can you give us a history of this property? I know that there was a long history in terms of the city trying to get it redeveloped. How many times has it gone out to RFP? And can you give us an overview as to what happened with the MGM proposal?
State your name and address for the record, Tim.
Oh, sure. Tim Sheehan, 26 Eckington Street, Chief Development Officer for City of Springfield. It has gone out for RFP 3 times. As Mr. Pulsifer has indicated, one of the big challenges for this site is the parking. And each of the private development proposals did not go forward associated with the project. And MGM ultimately substituted this project for their investment in 1331 Elm Street.
So this project or the redevelopment of this property has been somewhat of a priority for the city over the years, no?
It has been. It's an important building. Its condition has been vacant for a number of years. That's causing the building to deteriorate. And what needs to happen is it needs to move forward with redevelopment as quickly as possible. So we're not in a case that some other buildings are in at this point that it gets beyond what the redevelopment of the building can actually sustain in terms of ongoing, in terms of costs for redevelopment. So it has been a priority. It has been focused as housing as being the use. What it has not been looked at as affordable housing, but that is the proposed redevelopment plan.
Okay. I appreciate the background. How long has this property been vacant?
It's been vacant since the school department ultimately left it as the central office for the school department.
And that was in the early 2000s, if
I can't remember off the top of my head when that was, but it's been vacant for quite some time.
Yeah, and I'm assuming in the last RFP, was there a lot of interest for this property?
There were 2 that ultimately responded, Mr. Pulsifer's company and Davenport, who did Willie's Overland. In looking at both proposals fairly, the Davenport proposal had some missing components relative to the overall financing of the project, which was one of the issues with the previous effort. It just never got off the ground because it couldn't get through the financing side.
Okay. Mr. Pulsifer, how many properties does First Resource own and operate in the city of Springfield?
Approximately 80 buildings.
80 buildings. Approximately how many units?
1,500 approximately.
Okay. And how much are you going to be investing into this property?
The budget on this property is approximately $26 million.
So currently you have one project that you're working on over at the old Knox building, and that's roughly 50 million?
Yes, it's 2 phases.
Okay. And you just completed the motorcycle building, which was how much?
The motorcycle building was Mason 2, the second phase, and that was approximately 25 million as well.
Wow. So, Mr. President, I understand my colleagues' concerns in terms of the crosswalk and the park space, but we have to get to the nuts and bolts of this project. This is a company that has made a significant investment into the city of Springfield, and they continue to make that investment. We've gone through in previous special permits the percentage of minorities that have been hired for those projects. I'm not going to repeat that here because I'm sure that trend is going to continue. They met or exceeded the number of workers that were from the city of Springfield, and there were minorities that were employed at those previous projects. I hope that First Resource will continue to look at companies, construction companies in the city of Springfield, and continue to strive to employ Springfield residents on future projects, although that's not something that we can require in a special permit. And that's why I'm not going to go into it too deep. But we also want to make sure that they're hiring companies that are playing by the rules, and that there's not going to be any waste stuff occurring on these properties or on these projects. But my point, Mr. President, is that although I understand my colleagues' concerns around the crosswalk and the parks, et cetera, that is not the responsibility of this developer. So let's not get carried away. We don't want to suggest or try to implement any unnecessary requirements that we would not expect from other developers. Although this is a special project, because of the circumstances surrounding that immediate area, given the tragedy that occurred recently, the city of Springfield has already confirmed that we're moving forward towards hopefully putting in a crosswalk there. And so I don't believe that it should be the developer's responsibility, considering that the city of Springfield is already moving forward with that. And I appreciate, again, the concerns around the parks and et cetera. But Mr. President, we cannot require anything that we haven't required from other developers in the past. We don't want to start a precedent of, asking folks to, or holding into a different standard that we've held to everyone else. So we just got to be careful of that, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, Mr. Pulsifer, and thank you for all the good work you've been doing in the city of Springfield. I do have a couple of questions, and I have a totally opposite point of view from my colleague, Councilor Ramos, having just had the chairing the maintenance and development meeting tonight on pedestrian safety on State Street. The plan that was presented at our committee meeting by Director Chris Signoli, I wouldn't say was meant, people were very happy that finally somebody is taking seriously the safety concerns of State Street, the tragedies that have happened on State Street. But I wouldn't say this plan that was presented to my committee or the public was overwhelmingly or enthusiastically accepted. People felt that there should be more study and more analysis. So I don't think pedestrian safety on State Street is totally ready. And I don't know how it will impact your decision to go forward. Certainly, it isn't up to you to do it, but I felt at the end of that meeting that more public input was needed before they went forward with the plan for State Street. And my committee was very concerned that they don't even want to do anything tangible until spring of 2020. So I think safety concerns on State Street will be something that will impact your project and you might want to be part of. I'm also curious on 2 points, and I don't know who can answer this, but I believe someone earlier in the meeting said that 195 State Street was only going to be considered for housing. This is all that was proposed for the reuse of the building. Did someone say that, or did I mishear?
I said that, Counselor.
Okay, so only housing is being considered for this address?
Well, that was the previous proposals were for housing.
Okay, and nothing else has been considered there or put forward or discussed?
The previous proposals, as I indicated, were for
Right.
housing. And it's one of the as I indicated, in terms of alternate uses, the building only served for office use when the school department had the space that now is controlled by the museums in
Right.
terms of that surface parking lot.
So nobody ever came forward with a reuse plan for something besides housing?
That is correct, to my knowledge.
Okay, and I'm curious to know, I didn't hear that at the beginning of the presentation. Has a presentation been made to classical people that live at classical condominiums, and what was the result? Well, who would be part of Aqua?
Council Walsh, no, we did not make a presentation, but we've got some great positive feedback from people who live there, which wasn't read into testimony tonight, but we have had a meeting with Aqua, the Armory Quadrangle Association, Neighborhood Association, which has members from classical involved, which received unanimous approval on the project. And so I feel everyone's aware, and the neighborhood is well vested in all the information that we've shared with them in the city for our plans moving forward. And it's been very well received.
Okay, so in other times when you've done, and as you said, you've got many projects here in the city, when there have been concerns raised against the development, how have you addressed that? Have you been able to work that out with people, or do they usually come around to see that it's a good thing?
I think we've done a great job working with the neighborhood associations and local folks. What's the alternative here? What's the alternative for the building to be vacant another 20 years? This is a beautiful historic building. To spend this kind of money renovating this historic building, where would those resources come from? And what use could you have with no parking? We have the parking. First Resource Companies has the parking. And I think we're best suited to develop this building. And everybody on this council has watched us do this time and time again. Granted, this is challenging with no parking lot. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not afraid to solving the crosswalk issue. I've done it. I lost one of my best family members at Indian Motorcycle because of this problem. I want to be part of solving this problem. It's a solvable problem, and no further time should be wasted. Engineering plans should be drawn. That crosswalk should be put in, and we shouldn't spend 3 more months talking about this. Traffic goes very fast down the street. If this permit is approved, I am a year away from starting construction. So it's going to take time for us to get the funding. And by that time, the pedestrian traffic situation can be addressed, and which will provide a good situation for all the residents in that neighborhood. This isn't just 41 units. There's several thousand tenants and families that live in this neighborhood. I know, because we have so many buildings in this neighborhood. It's not just 41 apartments. It's for everybody downtown. And traffic on that hill needs to be slowed down. And I don't think there's anybody here tonight that disagrees with that. And anybody that has stood on that corner will see that something needs to be done. Whether you bring 4 lanes to 2 lanes, a study can be done to slow down the pace of traffic here, make it safe for the Springfield residents.
It's kind of interesting, particularly after our development meeting today. did anybody seek your input when they were doing this? I mean, I thought it was a Mass DOT study, and I found out today it wasn't. It was Fuss and O'Neill. Did anybody ask your input as someone who's been familiar with State Street?
No, but Fuss and O'Neill are my engineers.
Okay.
You know, I've shared lots of information with them, and it's our plans with them that developed that crosswalk on State Street. So, you know, I've made it very clear to anybody interested that I will share my plans if it's a good starting point to what would work there. And you know what? Maybe these plans don't work there, and we've got to slow traffic down another way. And maybe the light hanging over State Street is not going to be enough to stop traffic there. But that certainly can be worked out.
Okay, well, I'm going to put you on the list for my next committee meeting. I'm
I'm
curious about the facade. You know, 195 State Street is a historic building. Is it gonna, is the front of it going to change a lot?
No, it's Mass Historic in Boston will approve, along with Springfield Historic Commission, and the National Park Service in Washington. But the exterior of the building, you won't see a lot of changes other than new windows and the limestone being cleaned. The only one change in the front, to the left of the front doorway, there will be a ramp installed for handicap access on the left side. It will sort of disappear into the downhill grade, so it's accessible by handicap individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Mr. Pulsifer, I just wanted to mention the fact again for the second time that testimony was not read into the record. And I just want to be clear that there is a channel by which the clerk receives testimony on special permit items or hearings items. When things fall outside of that channel, then it sometimes gets missed. But in a bifurcated version, because we are in Zoom, the beauty of it, it allows for it to be caught and read into the record the second time. So this is not a perceived slight to you or anyone else. This is based on what we've been doing while we've been dealing with a pandemic. So I just want to make that clear for you. Councilor. Councilor Curran.
Thank you very much, Council President Williams. This question was for Tim Sheehan. If Tim Sheehan's still on the line. Tim, back in 2007, I remember the control board commissioned a report by the Urban Land Institute out of Boston. I think it was about $1 million we spent on that report. And I think the results of that report was in the South End and in the Metro Center neighborhood in State Street around Classical, that the city needs to concentrate on bringing market rate apartments, as the Urban Land Institute came up with the number of 83% of the apartments in that zone were subsidized housing. And then 2011, the city spent another $1 million post-tornado for a report where we brought community stakeholders in. And basically, the results of that report mirrored the 2007 report, was that we should bring market rate housing on the State Street corridor and South End corridor. I mean, does this project contradict those two reports? I mean, they gave a pretty extensive game plan for economic development for the city. And it seems to me, possibly, maybe I'm incorrect, but we're kind of contradicting our own reports that we spent at least $2 million on. I mean, did those reports come into play on the contemplation of the special permit?
Well, I mean, you would be issuing the special permit with regards to the use, which ultimately is housing. As I indicated previously, the other two previous developments were intended for market rate housing and ultimately did not come to fruition, much of which was due to the cost of the rehab. And with regards to affordable housing, there's a lot of different thoughts around affordable housing. You can have housing that's not deemed as technically affordable housing, but it is de facto affordable housing. It just doesn't have a restriction on it. And this neighborhood clearly has a lot of that. It may not be the type of affordable housing that is getting the low-income housing tax credits, but it is clearly affordable housing. But there is a need for more market rate housing in the downtown. That's clear. But, you know, in terms of the two responses that we got to this RFP, this proposal was the most complete and offered the solutions with regards to how it could actually be financed and done in a way that could ultimately get the project completed.
Well, if I could continue, I think part of the bedrock of those reports, those two reports, was to address an issue of generational wealth. That is to say, there's a lot of housing here where individuals don't have any equity in the apartments. They don't own the apartments. And was there any effort to address that here, and that some of the individuals who are going to live in these apartments can actually take out a loan on the apartments, that they would have equity? I think part of the report, the bedrock of it, was the residents who live in these apartments don't have equity. They can't borrow against their house. They can't borrow for college. And unlike that home city development that we just did, I mean, that there is home ownership possibilities. But in these two projects, are there home ownership possibilities? That'd be my first question. And my second question is on the two reports. I mean, aren't we contradicting what they're saying? I mean, that we did spend a couple $1 million on those reports. I mean, and
well, I don't agree with the premise that we're not contemplating market rate housing development in the downtown. It's just not on this particular building. Gordon, I can't answer the question with regard. I don't quite know how that structure would work in terms of a rental development project, in terms of how you would incorporate a model that would ultimately include home ownership as part of the rental.
Well, a developer could purchase the building.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you do not have the floor, Councilor Curran.
No, I yield the floor to Mr. Pulsifer. I think this is an important conversation.
Sorry. So now we're talking about real estate. Someone takes out a real loan, develops a building, and can condominialize the building, and that creates home ownership. But somebody has to step up and redevelop the property. And Councilor Curran, it's not what we do. That would be a significant risk for us in this area. The income, just so everyone's aware, the highest income level restriction on what we're proposing is $66,000. We have a lot of market rate units on State Street, and our tenants that have jobs that are market rate are in the 40 range. So yes, it's affordable housing, but based on our tenant mix and our families that live in our units, this is market. Does it present home ownership? No. That's not the programs that we're utilizing to build out the building. They don't allow this under those programs. So hopefully I've shed a little light on that.
No, you have. If I could just ask you a question, would the home city model, where it's not condominiums but it's low income housing but it's ownership, would that work with your numbers in terms of your tax credit that you're seeking?
I'm not familiar with their model, Counselor.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor. Oh, are you all set?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Curran. Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and the first is going to say I respectfully disagree with what Councilor Ramos said, because while you have invested quite a bit of money in the city of Springfield, you also get a benefit off of that investment. It's not like it's a sum zero where you're not getting anything. You're getting rental payments throughout the time. So you'll probably recap the investment, because I don't think anybody invests without getting a return on the investment. That's just what I'm familiar with. I do appreciate all the work you've done in the city of Springfield. However, I do still feel that quality of life for residents is important, and also the safety of crossing. And if they do have to go to the park down the street, I think you're talking about Pinchon Park, they would still have to cross the street to get over there. And so the safety of the pedestrians while they're crossing is important to me. And so is the quality of life of the residents. I don't know if I think that folks should have to really cross the street to have some type of activity on the premises of where they live, but it's not that far, and there's other things to do in the area. So I can see your point, but the pedestrian safety is important to me. Do you, Mr. Pulsifer, do you already have the funding secured for building this property?
Not at the moment, Councilor Whitfield.
And how much is it going to cost? You said to
Approximately $25 million.
25 million. You don't have it in place yet. Okay, but you seeking tax credits and additional funding to get that done. How much is the purchase of the building?
Purchasing it from the city, I believe the offer price was $21,000, Tim.
21,000.
Yeah.
So and what's your return on investment time frame? Once it's built and fully in full with the residents. Hold on, Mama.
Well, it's not so much a return on investment. I have to personally guarantee the construction, all the tax credits for the life of the job, that it's in compliance. So it's the income you make on these projects, Counselor, is all restricted.
You do get a return on investment though, Mr. Postfer. You wouldn't go into business otherwise, right? Is that accurate, or are you just doing it for the kindness of the company's heart?
Well, we do get paid a management fee, Councilor Whitfield. Okay. And if you're talking about cash flow on the project, there'd be very little, if any, on this particular building.
Okay. And
so to make the personal guarantees, I guess you're right. It's maybe out of the goodness of my heart to move a project like this forward. We normally don't do projects of this size.
You do larger projects?
Correct.
Okay. My next question is for Tim Sheehan. Would this project qualify for the Building Back Springfield program?
That's a question in terms of how they would be structuring the labor associated with the project. So I can't answer that, in a definitive sense for you. But just looking at the project as an adaptive reuse, it seems of a historic property, it seems like it could be a candidate, but I can't answer specifically without knowing that there is a requirement from Treasury that, on construction projects, that it has to be prevailing wage. And, because it's federal money, and they're ultimately, encouraging, strong labor practices associated with the use of that funding for construction.
Okay, I appreciate that, because what I want to say is the Building Back Springfield program, the $15 million that ARPA fund is being used. I want to ensure that it goes to businesses, local businesses that are struggling a lot to build up projects in the city of Springfield to reuse buildings. I think Councilor Brown I think this was actually his idea, and then the building back spring program came out on a federal level, and then we established a Springfield chapter. But I remember Councilor Brown asking for funds for non-traditional businesses that maybe can't afford to purchase these buildings and repurpose them or restructure them for reuse them for reuses. I don't know, get my words a little tongue tied, but I just want to ensure that we're not setting up a system where these ARPA funds that came to our community because of the Black and brown residents in our communities, COVID-19 rates is the reason why we got so much ARPA funding in the system. And so I just want to make sure that when we think about that program, we think about these small local businesses, small local residents, and people of color when looking at those funds. So I just wanted to ask you those questions because I will be watching how those ARPA funds are being used as well.
We are clearly looking at neighborhood commercial centers and looking at, buildings that have are historic and or are locally significant. And that locally significance could be, a building that's been in part of the neighborhood history for a long period of time, but it might not, meet the quote unquote historic definition.
Gotcha. Well, my point is I'm looking for local business owners, people of color, local residents that struggle to maybe get funding through the traditional methods of getting funding resources. And I want to make sure that they have a shot at this $15 million.
We're on the same page with that.
Okay, all righty. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Curran, followed by Councilor Ramos.
Just a quick question for Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Sheehan, when we put out these RFPs for the city, I mean, where exactly do we, what is the procedure for that? Do we seek out developers in other areas outside of Massachusetts? I mean, in terms of New York City, Philadelphia, or far away as Florida? I mean, obviously right now with the market, it's the interest rates are at an all-time low. This would be the opportunity to seek out developers that would look to bring in market rate housing, especially in conjunction with the fact that the city just bought some prime time real estate on Main Street and State for about $1.5 million about 3 months ago. I mean, what is your office's procedure to look for developers? Obviously, we're lucky to have a developer like Gordon Pulsifer to come into Springfield. He just said he bought 80 buildings here, he has 1,500 units. But besides subsidized housing, what are we doing in our office here for economic development to seek out market rate developers, especially at a time when interest rates are so low?
Well, the RFP process is run by procurement. So ultimately, the procurement department handles the solicitation that goes out. But once it's made public, we basically, from the OPED office, advance that out to publications and such to ensure that there's information out in the development community with regards to the opportunity.
But do we actually send teams, like, let's say, just for example, go to New York City and send somebody down to New York City and talk to the developers there and say, hey, we have a parcel here in Springfield that you might not know about, but this might be a place for some development. I mean, Brooklyn, New York, Manhattan, New Jersey, there's a lot of obviously real estate developers in that area, tri-state area. Have we ever?
That is the process. That is the process that we are going through with regards to the foreclosed portfolio.
Did we do that in this particular situation with the permit before the council tonight?
No, this ultimately was a city disposition of a building that it took back from MGM. And as I indicated, this building has challenges for redevelopment. Primarily, its total lack of parking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Curran, and I would just implore the councilor to work through the economic development or other committees to certainly talk about that issue, as I think it's an important one. Councilor Ramos, followed by Councilor Letterman.
Mr. President, I do have a quick question on Mr. Pulsifer, but just to follow up on what Councilor Curran was referring to. Tim, I believe the city did some sort of a developers conference a few years ago, where we actually invited developers from all over to look at potential projects in the city. Is that something that we would consider doing again?
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos.
Yeah, so thank you, Councilor Curran, for bringing that up. I think that's a great idea. Mr. Pulsifer, just a quick question. Can you give us an idea of which tax credits you're going to be applying for this project?
The low-income housing tax credits is in the state low-income housing, federal and state low-income housing tax credits.
Are you going to be looking for in the HTIP?
No.
Okay. Okay, and then so that Mr. President, I think will help address the issue that I mentioned earlier. Although again, it's not a conversation that I want to get too deep into. There were certain concerns about one of the subcontractors that was used at the some of the other projects, and in terms of wage staff. And so, the low income tax credits, there are certain requirements that come with that would help prevent that from happening in the future projects. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Councilor Letterman, did you have your hand up in the queue?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you so much. I actually had a similar question to Councilor Ramos about the tax credits that Mr. Pulsifer is looking to seek, and if he was going to seek an HDIP. So I'm thankful for that answer. The other question that I have, Mr. Pulsifer, you mentioned earlier about the structure of how these apartments are offered as a result of utilizing those tax credits and the maximum income that individuals can make. Can you talk a little bit more about how these apartments will be listed once completed, how folks will be able to, essentially look to rent them? And then also for folks that might not be familiar, how that income restriction works and what determines the maximum income?
Certainly, Council Letterman. Perhaps the best example would be the 60 apartments that this council approved at Indian Motorcycle. When complete, we held a housing lottery, which is required by the state. And for those 60 units, we had 700 applicants, the majority of which are Springfield residents, and many in that particular neighborhood. So it's a process that is advertised, a lottery is held, and even if someone doesn't make the cut, they're put on a wait list. Like I said, the majority of all Springfield residents.
Thank you. And then relative to the structure of the income limitation, how's that set?
Well, it's set based on number of people in the apartments, Council Letterman. I mentioned earlier, the highest income level is 66,000, and the tax credit rents are, for an example, 1,100 for a 2-bedroom, which is market rent in Springfield. So even though it's restricted, that is the market. So the program is really tailored very well for the city of Springfield and Springfield residents, as opposed to being downtown Boston, where the rents are much higher.
So the 66,000, that'd be on the 2-bedroom?
Yes. So
it would be $1,100 rent, which tenant would obviously be responsible for, less any programs that they happen to be involved in. And then what about on the 1-bedroom?
The one bedroom will be in the mid-40s. And the rent would be in the lower 900s.
And for the studios?
The studios would be in the 700 to 800 range, with income limits of mid-30s.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. Are there any other questions from the council at this time? Again, any other questions? Seeing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion to continue the item.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Edwards and seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to continue?
I'm continuing the item. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez? Yes. Councilor Allen? Away. Councilor Curran?
No.
No. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Brown? Yes. Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton? Absent. Councilor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Williams?
Yes, the matter has been continued. Mr. Pulsifer, the clerk will be in touch with you when the next special meeting next week will occur for the continuance of the item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item before us?
The next item is item number 6 for a special permit for the alteration of a pre-existing non-conforming structure at 1000 West Columbus Avenue.
All right, is there anyone present to speak to the special permit? Please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Auerbach, I think you are on mute.
President Williams, you are correct. I was muted. My apologies. My name is Harry Auerbach. I'm an account executive with Agnoli Sign here in Springfield, 722 Worthington Street. I'm joined tonight by the president and CEO of the Basketball Hall of Fame, John DeLiva, as well as Kevin Moran and Heather Cianciola with Colebrook Realty Management. We're here tonight, President Williams and the city councilors. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you a request for a new sign. We call it the North Pylon. Our goal is to replace the North Pylon as it has exceeded its life. The North Pylon has a digital sign that its current configuration goes back to 2005. It is can no longer be supported by the technology because they don't make parts for it anymore. And in doing so, working with John and with Kevin and Heather, we've come up with a new design for a new pylon sign. We call it a new North Pylon sign, which I believe you all have in your packets. Essentially, it's the same configuration, although we're going to fabricate it differently so that the northbound traffic will see the south face a little easier. Right now, it's perpendicular to the street. We're going to create a V formation, if you will, so that as you travel north, that south face is more visible. The sign, the new sign that we're proposing, the digital part of it is 12 feet tall by 22 feet wide. And it will still have the same tenants, the opportunity to displace at least 10 tenants. I think at this time I'll entertain any questions, or if I may, I'd like to have John just speak to why, in addition, because of the age, there are some other benefits to the sign itself.
And if you could just please state your name and address for the record. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. John DeLiva, President and CEO of the Basketball Hall of Fame. We're at 1000 Hall of Fame Avenue. So thank you, Harry. Thank you, councilors. President Williams, I appreciate your time and your consideration tonight. We actually applied for a Mass Office of Travel and Tourism grant for this. It was a one-to-one match. And as we presented that to the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, they were looking for something that was a long-term investment for the benefit of tourism. for these projects. And what we came up with was the road sign that we are proposing to replace the current one we have. But because of the involvement of the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, they have agreed to fund this at about 50% of the $260,000 cost. I've been working with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we have agreed, and Mass Office of Travel and Tourism was pitched this and accepted this, that we would promote other nonprofit tourism entities in the city. So the Armory, the Springfield Museums, the Seuss Garden, the Pancake Breakfast, Bright Nights. We can't do for-profit facilities like the MGM or other things like that. But we have agreed that we will also promote and co-promote our partners in tourism here. So it's a sign that not only affects the Basketball Hall of Fame and the many things that we do on a regular basis at our complex, but we are now, with the oversight of Mary Kay Wider at the CVB, going to also promote with this new sign other nonprofit tourism-related entities in the city. So we think that's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. DeLiva. Madam Clerk, at this time, I'll ask, have we received any testimony for those in favor of this special permit?
No,
And in opposition?
we have not.
All right, at this time, I will entertain any questions from the council.
Sounds good.
All right, are there any questions? Councilor Walsh.
Well, it's not really a question, but I just make sure I'm not muted. Okay, I think it sounds great. Is this going to be digital? Is it going to move the sign? Is it going to keep changing as you do other nonprofits?
Yes, so I don't know if Harry wants to speak to this, but this will be a digital sign. The one we currently have, as Harry says, is a 2005 model. I'm not surprised a lot of you don't notice that there is a sign there and it does rotate with different messages on it. This will be a high definition digital message board, much more clarity, much more brightness. And yes, it would move through a series of promotional pieces for not only the Hall of Fame, but also for the other entities and even beyond those that I mentioned that are nonprofit tourism-based partners that we have.
And say, for example, something like the Festival of Trees. Now, would people have to reach out to the Basketball Hall of Fame, or how would they get up on the sign?
So I've kind of worked that through with Mary Kay Wider at the CVB. She's going to kind of be the conduit for that. She's going to keep us honest at the Hall of Fame and coordinate with her members so that that we're being fair about it. So we have an outside party that oversees it.
Okay. And also the Springfield Cultural Council, I would hope, would be involved in that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the endless opportunities in terms of being able to do this. It's literally loading something from a computer into a program, and it runs, and it can be changed. Things can happen. They can be dropped, and new events can be brought in. So we think it's rather exciting.
I do too. Good luck.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. Are there any other questions or comments from council at this time? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to continue the item.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Wood, properly seconded by Councilor Walsh. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
On continuing the item, Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Madam Clerk.
Councilor Letterman,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Gomez,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Allen, away, Councilor Curran,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Whitfield,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Ramos,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Brown,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Walsh,
Yes.
yes, Councilor Davila,
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton. Absent, Counselor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Williams.
Yes, the item has been continued, and Mr. Albrecht and Mr. D'Oliva, just the same, reach out to you to be scheduled on next week's special meeting.
Thank you very much. City
Thank you
Council.
very much. Appreciate your time and consideration. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Madam Clerk, the next item, please.
The next item is item number 7 for a special permit for the reuse of an existing structure at the property known as 310 State Street.
All right, Mr. Pulsifer, could you please give your name and address for the record again, please?
Yes. Gordon Pulsifer, President of First Resource Development, 2001 Washington Street, Hanover, Massachusetts.
You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Williams. So I'm here again to talk about a special permit and request a special permit for a building on State Street located at 300 State Street. The building was the home office for the Federal Land Bank building, built in 1924. Although the building is very historic, it is not on the National Register, nor is it in a historic district. We are proposing to build 52 apartments on the property, 7 studios, 37 one-bedrooms, and 8 two-bedrooms, for a total of 52 apartments. There is on-site parking in the case of this special permit. There is an on-site parking garage. There's an upper deck and a lower deck. The lower deck has 24 spaces and the above ground has 32 spaces. I'm requesting a special permit. The property currently is not zoned for residential use and will require a special permit. It will not require any sort of variance for parking as stated. There's on-site parking. It is to the right of the courthouse, if those of you aren't familiar. The building is very historic, as stated. Our development plan includes using the common area spaces and maintaining them as hallways. Many of our hallways will go through existing vaults in the building. And so the historic nature will be preserved. We've applied to Mass Historic. Mass Historic has approved our Part 1 and forwarded it on to the National Park Service for designation. Again, our source of financing here will be utilizing federal and state low-income housing tax credits as described under the previous special permit and income levels. There'll be an on-site office, security cameras, video intercom systems for every apartment, and on-site staff. I believe that completes my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. Madam Clerk, have we received any testimony for those in favor of the special permit?
I have not.
All right. Have we received any testimony in opposition?
I have not.
All right. With that, I will entertain questions or comments from the council body at this time. All right. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Curran.
To the petitioner, did you have a chance to have a meeting with the Classical Condominium Association, Aqua, in regards to this proposal? I did hear in the papers, obviously, the other proposal down the street, but this one is kind of a new one, at least to me. But was there a meeting with the Aqua Association at Classical?
No, we requested one, Councilor Curran, and that's the board said that's not what they do. It's more of a board that takes care of the maintenance of the building. We received unanimous approval from Armory Quadrangle, which has representation from Classical. And so we feel that we have good representation in favor of the project from the neighborhood.
And just a second question, as this is a second property, but it's further along State Street. Was there a traffic study attached to this proposal at all either?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Curran. Are there any other questions or comments at this time from the council?
I would have one actually, Councilor Williams, for Mr. Sheehan.
Councilor Curran, yes.
Hey, Tim, obviously here in the city, one of the big issues we have on the State Street corridor and as a region is the courthouse situation. Was this building ever considered as a site for to mitigate or at least a temporary possibility for the Hampden County Courthouse? It's a major building here with parking, and it's right across the street from the federal courthouse. Was it ever? Did we ever approach the trial court as a economic development driver to maybe look at the courthouse as a developer? And secondly, it's really on the campus of STCC, and with all the COVID-19 money coming into the city of Springfield, has STIC or the Armory ever expressed interest at looking at this property? It really is one of the city treasures, and it's really an extraordinary building. It really is. So I just asking, did your office approach the trial court for a courthouse, or as a temporary courthouse, or if not the courthouse, STCC?
The trial court had site selectors that were out in Springfield looking at various properties. This did not come up on their list. We did have discussions about other properties, but this was not one of them that was on their list. In terms of STIC, it's my understanding that STIC has got a pretty sizable amount of unutilized square footage up on the campus. And I don't know of any direct interest coming from STCC with regards to this property.
Did we set up a meeting with STIC just to kind of go over it? I mean, I think they would have a vested interest in this property.
Again, we don't control this property. I did not set up a meeting with them. I don't know if the property owner has had previous conversations with them.
But it's understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Curran. Councilor Davila, by Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pulsifer, I just want to make sure, how many units on this unit proposal?
52 apartments.
52 apartments. Okay. Tim, quick question for you. It's kind of following up with Councilor, excuse me, Curran was talking about. Was there some sort of, I know you said we don't control this unit. I mean, what kind of other venues does the city take to ensure that we get as many ideas as possible for possible reuse, economic development in this? What's the process, I guess, in these situations?
Well, again, this property is privately owned.
Right.
So it's my understanding that there were conversations between Mr. Pulsifer and the owner of the property that ultimately has resulted in this proposed development coming forward before you.
Wait, and the permit that he's seeking is for what?
It's a special permit.
Zoning permit. That's a zoning permit, right?
Well, Counselor, it's a special permit because the proposed reuse has more than, I think, 10 units, which triggers a special.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure that I got my ducks in a row. All right, thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Councilor Davila. Councilor Edwards, followed by Councilor Allen.
I just want to clarify a couple of things. This property is privately owned and been privately controlled for years. It is not a part of the STIC campus. And in fact, years ago under James Woolsey, myself and others had meetings with the former president of STIC campus. At the time, we were able to secure more money for the renovations of the former junior officers' quarters. STIC campus has no interest in this property and hasn't had any in many, many years. Additionally, the STIC campus itself is a rare combination of state and federal or national park service property. So I just want to make sure that my colleague who was suggesting that STIC might have interest, they do not. And they have a master plan that they're working on for the expansion of their campus, but their campus model is to move toward a more modern campus, moving toward Pearl Street, not toward State Street. And the owners of this property have been working for several years to try to find a viable buyer for this property. And I want to just say that they were ecstatic to have interest by Gordon Pulsifer to redevelop this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Allen, followed by Councilor Letterman.
Thanks, Mr. President. I think my question might have just been answered. I know the property 195 State Street, that was a result of an RFP. But this one being privately owned, was this just something you knew was for sale, Mr. Pulsifer, and you just pursued it? Was that the idea?
Councilor Allen, yes, it's been for sale for many years. And it was my hope it would help solve the parking problem for 195 State Street, being walking distance away.
Yeah. Okay. Is it, I know I was in and out of that 195, I had connection problems, but is it part of the parking solution for 195? Sorry, I missed all of that.
It's not a permittable use being up the street, but it was, as a management company, it was a resource no different than our parking lots on High Street to solve the parking need for 195. And so it made sense if we were going to work on 195, which is a small project, that if we could somehow work on this one too. I think together, that section of State Street, we can wrap our arms around, and it would be a better management opportunity and coordination of the parking shortfall of 195.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Allen, Councilor Letterman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Pulsifer, will the rents and income restrictions be similar in this building as they were at 195, if not exactly the same, or will there be a difference in terms of what you're designing there?
They'd be the same.
Okay. And then there's a large mural that was painted as part of the Commonwealth murals on the side of the building. Will that stay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. Councilor Ramos.
Similar to what I asked regarding the other property, what sort of tax credits will you be seeking for this proposal?
Federal and state low-income housing tax credits.
And no HDIP on this one either?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ramos. Are there any other questions at this time for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to continue this item as well.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Edwards and properly seconded by Councilor Gomez. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to continue?
On continuing the item, Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Curran?
No.
No, Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Ramos?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton. Absent, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Williams.
Yes, thank you, councilors. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before the council this evening?
There is not.
As I mentioned before, a tradition that got interrupted because of COVID, some time ago was the holiday party that presidents usually throw for the rest of the council body. So this coming Monday, after, of course, the unofficial caucus for President Biden, and I want to invite you all to Sophia's around 7:45 for get together and hopefully some good camaraderie as we head into the 2022 year. So with that being said, God bless you all and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.